Welcome to the Love Conscious Human Podcast, your launch pad to cultivate and elevate your personal power. I'm your host, business strategist, and leadership coach, Dr. Terry. Let's have fun and jump right in.
Thank you for being here, Irvin. So today on Love Conscious Human, for the Love Conscious Human podcast, we have Dr. Irvin Cohen, and an amazing man doing amazing things in the world, a true love conscious human, and a client of mine, and such an honor to have served you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're coming from, what you're doing in life?
Sure. First and foremost, let me say thank you. And you are definitely a blessing at the right time for me. You and I didn't know a lot about you. You didn't know a lot about me. And I read your bio and I was like, hey, I'm choosing this lady right here. And so I appreciate you. But as you said before, my name is Dr. Irvin PeDro Cohen. I am coming to you from Jacksonville, Florida. Professionally, I am the Executive Director for LISC Jacksonville. And for those who don't know what LISC is an acronym for Local Initiative Support Corporation. And what we are is we are a financial and social intermediary in as much that we bring capital and technical assistance to some of our most under-resourced communities throughout our country. I just so happen to lead our effort here in Jacksonville, but there are 38 other colleagues of mine across this country in communities, as diverse as LA, San Francisco, Atlanta, Charlotte, Greenville, South Carolina. And we're in about 9 rural communities across this country as well. And again, as I said before, I get the pleasure of leading our Jacksonville, Florida efforts. And so I'm very happy for that. And again, thank you for having me here to share in your platform.
Oh, it's an honor. And I really felt grateful to have you as a client. I appreciate you very much. And
Right.
I really feel like we had a awesome journey, and always happy to see you succeed more and more, and also to see how you're moving the needle in the world.
Right. Well, I think my work with you made me rethink what moving the needle really was. I think oftentimes, particularly in the world that we live in and the environment that I came from, moving the needle generally gets associated with stuff and or achievement. And I think your work helped me to sort of rethink what did that mean to me specifically. And so again, I appreciate your introduction. The universe knew that I needed you at just that appropriate time. And so, thank you for just opening doors to me learning what being a love conscious and a love centered individual actually was.
Yeah. You were well on your way though when we met, I have to say. I mean, you were asking the questions. You were seeking, which is, I think, the most important thing. If anybody's listening, start there, right? You have to be seeking. You have to be wanting that growth and wanting to understand what it means to be fulfilled, and if you can have a mission or if you can have a calling and how that can add value to your life. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think for me, um, I was definitely and have been for a very long time in alignment with my mission. But I think the thing that you taught me through this work was, and made me really think about how I was looking at it, is to be okay with the question. I was never, okay with the question. And that was something nobody ever asked me that, or even suggested that that be a thing for me. And that was real huge, um, to be okay with the question and being okay holding on to the question. I always felt, and I liken it to, again, the world that we live in and the environment that I came from. Holding on to the question was symbolic of being stagnant and or having some level of apathy about your situation. And that's that you directed me into a place where that wasn't necessarily the case. And so by holding on to the question, it allowed me to almost be patient with myself and to love myself in that moment in a way that, again, I just that hadn't been that wasn't what I was schooled on. You stay, if you holding on to the question, then you been stagnant, son. And 15 people passing you by. And that wasn't what I was that wasn't the environment that I was reared in. And that wasn't the mindset. I brought a true warrior mentality to this work that I was doing. And you gave me the place of space to be able to say, to just fall back and really just look at things in a whole different light that I just hadn't had before.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a lot about, because you said warrior. I think there's this war mindset where we have what I call in my book, Flip Your Switch. I call it war consciousness, where you got to
Right.
capture, contain, control, eventually even kill something, in order to be in control. And I think that permeates our business model so much, and it's permeating society too. Like if you don't, you got to have it, you got to own it. What about just being a whole human being?
Right. And the
Like,
funny part of it for me is bringing this mindset into the workplace now. People always think you got an angle. And, I'm like, man, I don't have to win. I don't have to, you can win. I mean, I diffuse people when I'm sitting down having a conversation saying, listen, I'm walking in the door and I'm letting you know that you can win. So now let's get to the good part. Now that you ain't got to kill me in order to win, I'm saying you could win. Now let's deal with the business at hand. And
yeah,
that takes people completely off guard. And it allows me to literally, I find myself yelling, hey man, I'm this humble all the time. This humility isn't an act. This is who and what I am, and being able to own it in a world that is, literally in a war conscious mindset, whether we're physically at war or just from a mental standpoint, we are at war 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that to me was the beauty in what it is that we've actually, this journey that we've been on for over the last 6 months, has been all about. I mean, I'm in a much different, space, and it's a much more peaceful space than I've ever been in my whole entire professional career, quite frankly.
yeah, I think, and that's where you so in my book, shameless plug, here we go. Flip Your Switch, a user's guide.
I mean, I'm down. That is my favorite book. My nephew, ironically enough, texted me the other day and he said, hey, Uncle PeDro, what are 3 books that you would recommend to me? And your book was right up there in the top 3 that I would recommend to anybody.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, because that's what it's for. I can't coach everybody. I can't teach everybody this method of fulfillment and finding peace and finding personal power. I can't do it for everybody, but I laid it out in a book so you can get most of what we talk about in a session. You can get it there. And I know you already devoured the book. I've seen your version. I've seen
That's why I won't give it to anybody. I've had people who come to my house and they'll see the book sitting on my coffee table with all of the tabs and everything, and they're like, "Yo, let me borrow this book." And I'm like, "Man, listen, let me buy you one, but you cannot take this one with you at all." So your book has gotten some real wear out of it.
Yeah.
Again, just from a daily bread perspective almost. It has gotten some wear and tear out of it, because again, I say it's, there are very few things that I would say have the capacity to be life changing, but flip your switch is definitely one of those things. If you go into it with the right mindset, has the capacity to be life altering.
Yeah. I mean, frankly, 35 years I was working on it to understand what it means to shift like that.
Right.
10 years, I spent 10 years, so it was not an academic book. The last thing I wanted to do was put out another academic book, all brainy, that nobody could even use or read. So I
Right.
really boiled it down. I really
Right.
boiled
Well,
it
again, I can't speak to what you did. All I can tell you is the impact that it has had on me personally and with your audience. Um,
That's
and I
all.
read a lot of different books, some to inform my practice, others just as a means of escape, and then some to just make me, the capital M-E, a better person. And this is one of those things that I feel very comfortable saying, it has made me a better person.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So now, like, I'm going to ask you a few questions that are a
Sure.
little questions that we get all the time when we talk about love consciousness. And I know how I would answer the question, but I want to understand your experience.
Sure.
Oh, so you're going through this process and you started flipping the switch, and this is something that never really ends, right? I'm still doing it. We're all doing it. Nobody's perfect. We're all going to like keep working on this. But
Right.
as you embrace an understanding of this whole love consciousness, and I'll define that real quick for the audience. So love consciousness is the opposite of war consciousness. Love consciousness is not a divisionary state. War consciousness is divided. That's where you and I are gonna, be combative. Somebody wins, somebody loses, somebody's right, somebody's wrong, somebody stays, somebody goes. And that's where we don't understand our interdependence as humans. That's war consciousness. And then love consciousness is the other side, where we are interdependent. We seek to comprehend what's going on. We open our mind up. We look at multiple dimensions. We think about everybody in a larger scope, who's involved in the problem, not just what I need to get out of it, but what are the consequences to other people. It's where you are looking at the world and yourself with compassion. It's a healing state and it's a constructive, creative state of being. Okay. So now back to the question. What changed for you as you started to drop the warrior and embrace the love conscious state of being?
I think two things jump out at me just right off the top of my head. I did not have to win all the time. Like I wasn't consumed with winning. And, winning looks a whole lot of ways. I wasn't consumed with that portion of it. And then when I wasn't, while it liberated me from this notion of winning, it slowed my whole existence down such that I could now, smell the roses. That's what it did for me. And that burden of every day I'm trying to, eat what I kill, it liberated me from that. And it just slowed my world down to the point where I could now see, oh, that's a ladybug on that flower right there. My I think and that to me gave me a chance to be a true observant to what was happening around me every single day. And that overarching, those two things in and of themselves truly breeds a level of humility and liberation into you that I don't think you get anywhere else. I mean, this mindset truly had that level. It was a cosmic shift from me.
Yeah, it is.
The grind of, I like to think of my work as moving humanity forward. And my best friend always, tells me, man, that's a heck of a weight to bear when you say you moving humanity forward. But this shift to a love consciousness didn't even make that burden as described by everybody else heavy. Matter of fact, it lightened the burden. And so I became, this notion of my brother and sister's keeper, it gave me something that I needed to be able to sustain this work of mine for a lifetime. Because although I'm aspirational about some things, I'm not consumed with what is the next thing.
I love that. Yes. Now you've mentioned humility a couple of times, but when I hear that, I think actually maybe because humility, I think to most people sounds like, oh, you're being humbled. But
that's not what I mean. Humility for me is coming in, where I see you. I see you. I mean, that to me is humility. And I hear you. And it's and what I want doesn't have to supersede seeing and or hearing you. I mean, I respect your existence and your desire to and the possibility that you can be right. And also accepting the fact that you can be wrong too, and not make it a thing. This whole notion of love has just freed me in a way to just be, and be in a way that goes contrary to what we are conditioned to believe our existence to be out here in this world.
Yes, because the conditioning is fundamentally somebody wins, somebody loses, somebody's right, somebody's wrong, but that's actually really very small.
I'm not even looking for the right or wrong, and I'm not even looking for the win or loss. That doesn't even cross my mind. It's, my hope is, and my aspiration, and none of this is idealistic. I mean, the work that I do for a living, you get to see the human condition sometimes at its worst. People are living in substandard housing. People can't eat. People can't, don't have safety. All of those things at some level, I come in contact with, and that could be heavy.
Yeah.
And that could be extremely heavy. And I sometimes take that home with me. And, the thing I tell people, you can't unknow what you know. You can't unsee what you saw. And you can't unhear what you heard. And you can't unexperience what you've experienced. You can't do any of that. And so my thing is, this work has allowed me to see beyond the condition that people find themselves in and just say, man, it's okay. You know, you ain't wake up and say, today I want to be poor and I want to live in the worst housing ever. That's not the condition that people find it in. And so this work has allowed me to see the humanity past their condition.
Yes.
And on the other side of that, I come in contact with people who have more wealth than they will ever be able to spend in 3 or 4 lifetimes. But it allows me to see beyond that as well. All of that stuff is, for me, is just the facade. So how do I come into this work getting past, these exterior conditions, and it's the love beyond that. It's the love
Yes.
beyond that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, that was great. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think it's important for people to understand this is this love conscious human thing. It's a practice. It's practical. It's
It's
not a
practical and it's functional, given that, and the work for me lies in the fact that sometimes people are going to be downright assholes. I
Mhm.
mean, and you got to love beyond that. So it's not idealistic saying that, I just love on everybody. It's not that, because sometimes people push you all the way to your limit, those in the worst condition and those in the best condition. They push you to your limit. And so how do you get beyond that to this state of love that, again, allows you to know that, man, this ain't real. None of this stuff is real right here. They are in a war consciousness because the environment that they come from dictate that they got to be in war consciousness. They can't
Yeah.
even put it down because they are afraid. And again, that goes on both sides of the track. The
Yeah.
person who has wealth, they are conditioned that somebody is always trying to take it from them. And the person who don't have any wealth, they are conditioned that if I show my exterior to someone, show this interior portion of me, you're going to take advantage of me too.
Exactly. And that is all that war consciousness. And I love this example that you're giving, because it's all in the state of consciousness of the person that is experiencing it. So it doesn't matter what you do in life. It doesn't matter what you have, for the most part. War consciousness is a state of being, and love consciousness is a state of being. And you get the best and the worst of both of these states of beings in every single bracket demographic of society. There is no good or bad. There's no real evil. There's no real heaven. It's all, what are you doing? How are you showing up? What is your practice? And being a love conscious human is really about practicing understanding, that comprehension, stepping back, asking yourself those open questions. Well, what's really happening here? How do we benefit everybody, including myself? It's not like we exclude ourselves either, but it's getting to that place where we are not trying to be angels. We're just trying to be really good humans.
Yeah,
Show
I don't want that. I don't want that
be there.
weightiness of being an angel. I don't
Mm-mm.
want that. I just wanna, my goal every day is to just show up in my whole self and simply be. And my hope is that at the end of the day, that was enough. That
Mhm.
was enough. And again, therein lies I want to be liberated every day when I close my eyes, to know that if I wake up, great, I got another day to do this thing again and perfect those things that, may have been imperfections from the day before. And if I don't wake up, then the world was a much better place because I was in it, and or that, hey man, somebody felt good knowing me, that their interaction with me was a pleasurable experience.
Yeah, yeah. And it really affects your ability to relate, doesn't it?
It does. It does. It does.
I want to ask you also, while you were going through this journey, and I know you're still on it and we'll still be on it, but what was the most surprising thing that you learned?
I think the thing that I learned that was most surprising to me was how conditioned people are to want to be at war all the time. I mean, like, that is a thing. That is a whole thing for them. And I'm like, man, I'm not here to, I mean, this is who I am. And anybody that does not come again with a warrior spirit, how we have conditioned our society to look at them skeptical, with literally this, with almost a side eye lens. We have conditioned ourselves to look at them that way, and that to me that's funny. That is funny, and I'm like, that's a weight that I don't want to carry around. But we have been that's been the thing that I've learned, and sometimes I have to tell myself, just because you've had this level of spiritual awakening to a degree does not mean that everybody else has.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a really quick, funny story. And I'm coming into this, to this consciousness, and I have a social media friend, and he and I were debating the merits of mental health. And he, is of another, thought process. And he said, well, let's go on social media and debate it live over on social media. And I said, and then what? And he was like, you afraid? And I said, well, I'm not afraid, but how do we determine a winner? And I'm okay with you being right. It just so happened I believe something different. And that literally like blew him away, in the sense that I'm asking, well, what do you get if I say you're right now, I just believe something different, and I'm okay with me being wrong, since we got to have a right and a wrong, and you're right. Now what? And he didn't have a now what. It was just like, I'm right. And I'm like, okay, where's this conversation going? And people are not conditioned in this society to be accepting of that. And that's been a like, wow, like a real
Yeah.
to me.
I love that story. And also I love like, well, where does this go? Right? Like where's the creativity? If we're just reacting to each other, if we're just somebody's right, somebody's wrong, somebody's winning, somebody's losing, how do we get to the next step where we're actually creating solutions or discovering new discoveries or innovating products and processes? Like, how do we actually build anything or solve anything? And that's the beauty of love consciousness, is that actually that's where solutions happen, because it's the three. It's where you step out of a kind of perverted polarity of right and wrong, and you go beyond, where you can both be right and you can both be wrong. Now, what do we do with what you know? What do we do with what I know? And how do we make solutions that help people or do good things in the world?
And I
And
don't think people, I think when we get to it, I'm starting to ask myself, do people even want to get to that point?
well, I think what's happening is that they just don't understand what that point is because they've never been there.
Right. I
You know,
mean,
it's only when you get there for a minute, you get a glimpse of it, and then you get to understand because you experience what that's like. Like you said, there's moments in our coaching, where you would click and have an epiphany, and then you're holding the question, and suddenly you're no longer at war. You get to relax inside, your cognitive dissonance gets to fade away, and then you're like, oh, I'm actually okay. And I can make other things okay from this space. And you're neither super good nor super bad. You're just a wonderful human being moving the needle.
right,
And how joyful and how wonderful and rich that is enough.
right. I think, and again, the weight of the question wasn't as heavy as I thought it, as I came into it thinking it was. Without that, again, that's a level of freedom that, I don't know if our Western society, for the most part, has afforded us the runway to have that kind of freedom. We have been taught that every single minute of our day gotta be consumed with something or some desire to do something. And so coming into this space, it lightened the load because I freed myself from that. I freed myself from, again, I'm aspirational about things I want to do professionally, but I don't have the weight of dragging that along because once I get there, then what? Once I get there, then what? I'm free from all of that. I mean, I think for me, the pre-work was being very comfortable. I am doing the work that, August 16th, 1969, when I came into the world, I was born to do. That I'm very clear with. And having that level of clarity has allowed me to not be aspirational about, what does the next portion of this look like. I'm okay with, as the journey unfolds itself and my next appears, I will have all the tools that I need in the toolbox to step into it and be the best that they have ever seen before. And
Yeah.
that to me is the love consciousness in action.
Yeah. It's just a whole nother level of consciousness.
Oh, absolutely it is. Absolutely it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I have my moments, but my good moments far, you know, you know, far outpace my bad moments. And when I'm having those bad moments, I I have gotten to the point where I ask myself, is this a love conscious thought or is this that war consciousness thought that I have? And again, more times than not, I can answer that. And when I can't answer that, then that's when I just need to sit still and be quiet, and it will answer itself for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great because that's exactly how you can incrementally change. Like nobody can flip their switch and just snap their fingers, but you can incrementally shift once you understand the fundamentals of war consciousness and love consciousness. It's just a question of, why do I feel this way? Why am I having these thoughts? What's going on? And then you investigate. Is this war conscious? Is this love conscious? Which way am I leaning? And then and then you choose.
Right,
Awareness leads to choice, leads to change.
right. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And again, um, the the choice is mine to make. And do you want to feel this heavy? I mean, if you do, then okay, cool. That's the choice that you made. Or do you want to feel light and airy? And I have chosen for me um, the spirit of love consciousness. Um, it's packable. You can put it in your backpack. You can put it in your pocket. You
Yeah.
know, it's such a better way of navigating your space. I mean, for me, it's like I said, it's been a game changer.
Yeah. Is there anything, as we wrap up here, is there anything you'd like to say to anybody out there listening that to encourage them how to move in this direction?
Well, I think there are three things I would say to people. Um, First and foremost, you got to find what your currency in this life is. I mean, you just got to define what your currency is. For some people, it's money. Some people, it's fame. Some people, it could be a mirror of things. But find out what your currency is. That's number one. And number two, ask yourself the question: is what you're doing allowing you to operate at the highest version of yourself? And only you can answer that question. Those first two, only you can answer. And then the third thing, I would encourage you to buy the book, Flip Your Switch. I mean, that's just what I mean, and again, Dr. Terry didn't ask me to do that, but again, that I believe so much so in the thought process associated with it that I just think that it's part of the three things that, I mean, because everybody needs a guide, everybody needs a teacher. And in light of your capacity to create yourself, millions of times and serve people all over the globe who will see this, I will say to them, if you cannot get you as a coach or a teacher or whatever whatever they would call you, is to buy the book as a tool to help them navigate. But develop your currency, discover your talent, and then get the book as a guide or schedule some sessions with you as a guide. And I assure you, it'll make all the difference in the world.
You are so kind. Thank you so much.
I mean, the truth is easy when
I did not pay him to say that.
she did not, and she did not ask me to, but I am that much of a believer in the work that you and I have done together, that it would be criminal on my end to not say to those folks who watch this podcast or hear this or even read the transcript of our conversation here, to not say they should do one of those two things and as a third option of this. But it's all for naught if you have not developed what your currency is out here in this world, and or you have not defined what it is that uniquely you're given life every day to do. And I think for a lot of people that's hard. That's really, I mean,
that's what we said earlier. Like, you got to be a seeker at some point.
right.
You have to be looking and be at that point where you're good at something and that you want to do something. You just haven't figured out exactly how you're going to roll that out and do it well.
Right. And we don't live in a world where that's encouraged. We don't live in a world where that is encouraged. I mean, people go through life and they retire from jobs, and they do 40 years on a job, because they've got a lifestyle built around it, and it's not something that they even enjoy and or are very good at. But they have been there for 40 years, and that's that. I mean, I got the luxury of I get to work up every day and make a difference on a large scale in communities that I care about, doing
Yeah.
things that, people need. So I'm lucky. Um, and I found that, as a second act. And so I know people don't get a chance to be me, but again, I think that you have to do those things. And then the third thing is, and if it's not you, it's got to be somebody in that vein, or the book is a great way to get to it. So that's my shameless plug for you.
Okay, thank you.
My
All right.
pleasure.
And thank you for coming on and sharing
My
some.
pleasure. And thank you for having me. And thank you again for, being a part of my journey for the last 6 months. It truly has made a difference. And hopefully, the world is better because you and I have connected, and, and hopefully I'm, stay on the path of moving humanity forward.
Yes. You take care.
All right. You do the same. Have a good evening.
Thanks for listening to this episode from start to finish. It is always a pleasure to reach a fellow love-conscious human. If you want to expand on your consciousness education, check out the book, Flip Your Switch, on Amazon, and the courses on loveconscioushuman.com. Or you can book a private coaching session with me. We hope you'll join us again. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Let's come together to crowdsource a love-conscious world.